is the retirement question.
Right.
And whether or not, if you retire tomorrow, how long would you stay completely solvent?
Right.
And that's a big thing that I'm concerned about, especially since I'm single and there's like no other income coming in. So it's like, what do you do?
That's a good one. That's a very common one with people with 401k. Do they have enough? Do they have enough? So thank you. Anybody else hear something that really raised an eyebrow for you? Okay. Well, then I'm going to go back and open our discussion with the questions. So I'm going to go here to the questions.
Before you do that, Deidre, this is Janet.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I have one, something that stuck out to me. I guess it's not how much money you make, but how you manage that money. That's a big one. I think a lot of people do think they need to make more money, and that's not always the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that stuck out for me because I know I'm one of those people that needs to manage it better.
Yeah, I guess they say we spend as much as we make.
Right, exactly.
No matter how much we make, if we don't have some type of financial discipline or better strategies to budget our money, we're going to stay in the same situation,
right?
Same cycle. And that is why we are making money moves to just get a little bit of financial education that I know will take us a long way. So I'm going to start with these questions and challenge you guys, because once you start thinking about your role in your financial situation, you become accountable to what it is or isn't. So that's what this is all about, that we can be better stewards of what we have and do better. When did your financial education begin? Now, I know I asked that question last week and Lisa chimed in, but that was a very good question. When did your financial education begin? And was it from this book or from another source? Anybody want to chime in on that one? Okay, we'll go on to the next one.
I will, Deidre. I tend to think, for me, this is Angela, I tend to think for me that we think that financial education is formal, like a formal education. I think when you sit back as a child and you watch your parents write out the bills, write out their, pay their bills, and you go to the grocery store with your mom and she's grocery shopping, and I think that's also a form of financial education. So it's not necessarily that the education is a formal education where, you're sitting in a class and you're learning how to balance budgets and assets and liabilities and things like that. But I think there's other ways to get educated that maybe are ingrained in us at an early age and we just don't realize it.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And it's also what this Rich Dad, Poor Dad is all about. None of it was, in school training. It was all, from the other, his friend's dad who showed them, he showed them how to do things in an informal way. So that is a very good point. Maybe we had not thought about it, right? In our churches, we can keep it formal or informal, but the tithe is so important, that 10%, it's so important. And I think what's even more important is the 90. How do we get, working on that 90%. I think that is equally important, because I figure if we work on that 90%, we'll certainly be able to give a better 10% and build up, the churches. So I think it's very important where we learn financial literacy, whether it be formal or informal, but we're hearing something to generate more wealth. And I can't even keep going back to the story of the talents, but it's such a good story about what they did with what they had, right? So that's very good, Angela. And you shared how you watched your father and your parents be entrepreneurs at a very young age, getting an ice cream truck. So that's really something. Okay, so we'll go down to the next question. How did you react when you first read Robert's definition of an asset and a liability? Now, I know there was a lot of arguments on this a couple of weeks ago when we talked about it, but how do you guys react to Robert's definition of an asset and a liability? He keeps it simple. Liability takes money out of your pocket, and an asset puts money in your pocket. But as it relates to what assets are, how do you guys react to that? Do you have a changed thought about your home after listening to what Robert has explained?
I would say the home one, you always think it's supposed to be an asset. So that's the one that kind of stands out to me the most.
Okay. And he explains that in detail. So I don't know if anyone read chapter 1 and 2, but when he gets to 2, he explains that in great detail about, putting so much money into the house,
right,
to keep it up, so the money's going into the house, but, we're at the mindset that we're bringing up the value, and that's why we're doing, let's just say, some improvements. But he really keeps his challenge on that a house is, not an asset as we know it. Is your house putting money in your pocket, so to speak? So we can toss that around, the thoughts on that. But anybody want to challenge that before we go on to question 3? Well, that was really question 3. Did it change your mind? That's really the question. Did it change your mind?
It didn't change my mind. This is Janice again. It didn't change my mind. I don't know. I mean, I understand the thought process behind it, but I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with it 100%.
Okay.
And I say that, and someone can challenge me and maybe help me to see it the way that he's thinking of. But when it comes to home ownership, I understand that. But then again, if you didn't own a home and you were just paying rent, where does that money go? Like, that is definitely not, that will never be an asset. So and you have to live somewhere. It's not like you could say, well, it's not like a pair of shoes that you can say, I'm not going to buy those pair of shoes because, it's a liability. So I kind of have mixed feelings on that, but I understand the thought process and where he's coming from. Trust me, because I've had to put a lot of money into my home, so I understand it. But at the same time, I'm like, well, if I lived in an apartment, how would that be an asset? I guess I could take that money and make it an asset. I'm not sure. So I guess that's where maybe someone can explain that to me.
Well, the way I saw it is that an asset puts money in your pocket.
Right.
You give me the examples of how your house is putting into your pocket. while you're living there.
Oh, but okay, right. So I don't, that's what I'm saying. I get that. I get the concept, but I guess people, when they think of their home as an asset, they're thinking more long-term, not like this second. So, I mean, like I said, I understand that, but you have to live somewhere. So that would automatically be a liability anyway. If you rent it from someone, that's a liability as well, because that's definitely never going to put any money in your pocket. So that money, you have to take that money and it has to go somewhere. It's more expensive these days to rent than to own in a lot of ways. So
it is.
So I don't, like I'm saying, I don't really, I understand the concept and the thought behind it, but I don't.
Okay, that is so fair. And the thing is, we don't want to get stuck there. We want to multiply. So if you get another home and rent it out, that is the prime example of now this is an asset because it's putting money into your pocket, you know, if you were renting out the home. And that's why it's the oldest trick in the book. And that's why so many people are doing it. And because the way things are, they are really just cashing in. You know, if people don't like to rent, they just don't require that you're able to pay the rent and have a job. What else do they require? What else do they require? They require you to have good credit.
Right.
And this, and if you don't, you know, have good credit, you know, they make the rent even higher. You know, it's just the dynamics. That's why people are renting, because there's so many people that can't afford to buy homes because their credit is not good and they're forced to rent. But even renters are now saying you got to have good credit. Well, if you got good credit, then you might as well go on and purchase something, you know. So it's just that the dynamics has changed and people are really ching and on rental property, on those second properties, however they are, you know, Airbnbs, you know, however they're using the property, you know. So it's quite interesting. It really is. Going on to question 4, which cash flow situation looks most like your life? Which cash flow situation looks more like your life? Well, when he was describing the couple, that really, you know, that described exactly what we were doing as young people, you know. So anybody else have something they want to chime in, and which cash flow situation looks most like your life from here in the summary? And some of these might be irrelevant to you if you hadn't read chapter 2, but I think he did a pretty good job of trying to sum it up. You know, I think he did a pretty good job of trying to sum it up. What did you think about that story about, you know, the house is like planting a tree? You know, I mean, an asset, excuse me, is like planting a tree. And then over time, you know, it's not going to need you. It's just going to grow, you know. I thought that was a good, you know, metaphor there. All right, let's go on to number 5. Other than your home, is there something that you thought was an asset that later revealed itself as a liability other than your home? Anybody ever thought about that? And this is really to get you to think. Other than your home, is there something you thought was an asset that later revealed itself to be a liability? Once again, a liability is something taking money out of your hands.
I think that some of the retirement plans that require you to pay money on the back end, that could be definitely end up being a liability once you retire. That a lot of 401ks, if they're not Roth 401ks, you will pay the taxes because it's pre-tax. When you pull it out, you're going to pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
And so that could definitely be something that people will look at and say, oh, so it's an asset, but it could be a liability in the long run.
Yes. Yes. I just heard that law was changed in lieu of COVID, that you could now take money out of your 401k and not be taxed if you were using it for a business or for something that would gain you more money, use it for assets. So I heard of a person that actually started a juicing business, took money and used it to start a business, and they weren't taxed. And this is something new that's come out of COVID, But that tax thing is definitely a big deal because they don't want you to touch it, They don't want you to touch it.
Teacher, this is Lisa. One of the things that I don't have one personally, but I know people who do and they regret it, is timeshares. So people say, oh, I'm going to be able to travel. I own, have ownership in this timeshare.
That's a very good one.
The terms change. You don't have any control, but you're bound to paying the maintenance fee every year. You can't control how much it goes up. And even if they switch the location to where you thought you were buying into when it no longer exists, you still have to pay and you're stuck. And it's near impossible to get out of them. So I think a lot of people who initially bought timeshares are regretting it and see them now as a liability.
Yes. And I don't know if anybody on here has a timeshare and if it has been a liability or something that didn't turn out to be what they said it was going to be. I know my brother can speak to that for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a timeshare at one time, but I got rid of it, but it was so hard to get rid of.
You had to lawyer?
Sorry? Yeah, I had to get an attorney to get rid of it because, they keep wanting to get their money. They keep upping the maintenance of it and, they just want their money. So I had gotten rid of it.
Okay.
But it's very hard to get rid of.
Yeah, I've seen commercials about, businesses now that will help you get rid of your timeshare, So I know it's bad. I know that was really something. Yeah.
Yep. So what you got to do is when you're going to vacation for Disney tickets, just leave the pocketbook at home.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. That was a really good one. So we're thinking, right? For us to really think about. Okay. Of course, we want to get to the level as entrepreneurs and, educated people of income generated assets. That's what we want. We want income generated assets, right? Assets that's going to put money in our pockets. And this is just a few. And I know there's many that are not even on here. And I want us to just look at this list and maybe somebody has something that they're doing that's bringing the money that's not on here. But these are just the basics. Real estate investments, trust, real estate investment, right? So far, we know that's the hottest thing that people can really do right now. Is real estate investment, and however you do it, right? However you do it.